Hey y'all, my name is Johannes. I'm one of the incoming officers next year, and I just want to share a little bit about what God has done in my life, what I hope He'll continue to be doing um, during my last few years at Stanford. I especially want to talk about how He's grown in me just a love for His Word that I didn't have before, and that I wouldn't have been able to find without Him. And so during my sophomore year, I was reading through Psalm 1, and the first couple verses really stuck with me where it says, "Blessed is he who delights in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers." And so as I began to read this passage, I felt like God was saying two things to me. The first being that when he said he wanted me to meditate on his law day and night, that he actually wanted me to do that he wasn't kidding. Um, and the second thing being that as I did this, as I meditated on his law, that he would bring forth the fruit of my life that he wanted to see, and that I would prosper in the things that I did. And this sounded pretty good to me, so I began to make a couple changes in the way that I prayed and the way that I read the Bible. And one of these changes I made was something I learned from the Chi Alpha intern my freshman year, Sierra, who just talked about spending some time praying before reading God's Word. And so before I opened my Bible, I would just spend some time praying that God would show me what He wanted me to understand in His Word, that He would help me understand it, that He would help me respond to it in a way that honored Him. And I also spent some time praying, confessing any sin that I felt like was in the way of my relationship with God, or anything else that got between me and God. Um, and as I did these things, I began to see just how much God wanted to speak to me and how ready He was to meet me and show me His truth, as long as I was ready to listen. And it was so much easier to listen to when I didn't have to worry about guilt from sin that I'd already confessed, or when I came with a heart of anticipation that was eager to hear His truth. And the second thing I did was to that I still have difficulty doing now sometimes, and I still struggle with doing now, was to make unconstrained time for God to just speak to me and for me to meditate on His Word. I would just look for blocks of time and not put time limits on it, and just read God's Word and pray until I felt like I came to a natural conclusion. And one of the ways that helped me do this was to just grab my hammock, bike out to a little grove of trees between the Oval and Lathrop, and just sit in my hammock and read the Bible and pray until I felt like I'd reached a natural conclusion. And as I began to do this, I began to see how, again, God was ready to speak to me when I just made time to listen to Him. And through the process of doing this over weeks, over months, I began to see how I began to delight in God's Word more and more. I also began to see how His promises came true in the rest of my life, that I really became a little bit more like that tree planted by streams of water, having my foundation in something firm. I began to have confidence in areas where I had worries before, whether it was little things like schoolwork or worries about plans after graduation. I would now have more confidence that God would bring me where He wanted me to be, and that all I had to do was to seek Him first, to read His Word, to apply it, and seek to glorify Him in the rest of my life. I began to have peace in areas of my life where I previously may have been stressed, may have been worried, that I couldn't explain. And through all this, I just saw how God's Word is true and God's promises are true. And I began to grow more and more in love with this Word. And I just pray that my prayer for this year, I guess, is that as we, as a community, read His Word, as we seek Him together, that we would delight more and more in His Word, that we can see His promises come true, that we might be a blessing to each other, and also a blessing to Stanford and also all the communities that we are part of. That's all. Hope this was encouraging.